Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gone Fishing. I'm your host, Connor, CEO at Phin, and I am joined by Head of Growth at Thread, Bobby Jacobs. Bobby, how are you?
Doing great, Connor. Good to be here. Excited to go fishing.
Excited to go fishing. Now you've gone fishing, as it says.
Fair enough. That's right. We've gone fishing. You know, we're pirates. We spend a lot of time on the high seas, so it's appropriate to fish.
That is right. For folks who have no idea what Bobby's talking about, if you catch him or any of his coworkers at an event, they're usually dressed up in pirate gear and they're very noticeable. So it's pretty cool.
It's a lot of fun.
For folks who don't know you and don't know Thread, could you just give us a little bit of your background and also a little bit about Thread?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Love helping MSPs utilize new technology. I got to work with LionGuard for a number of years before I was with Thread. Had worked with some hardware distributors and startup accelerators and such before that. Thread is a super fun company. Like a lot of vendors in the space, we come out of a pretty large MSP ourselves. Our founders, Matt and Mark, were head of data and chief of staff at the MSP. And so, yeah, you know, we're a service experience platform. We're all about helping people meet their customers where they live, provide great experiences. A little newer on the space. I think one thing I'm really excited to maybe not get a ton into today, but at least get to collaborate on is we're pretty similar in far as age and size and growth. And I love talking about what's going on with Phin. And, you know, I think we've both been on a bit of a similar ride. So it's cool to be here.
I remember seeing you at your first conference with Thread.
Yeah.
After having
DattoCon.
Yeah, DattoCon in DC.
That's right. It's awesome.
Absolutely. So, Thread leverages AI in some capacity, and a topic that you brought up here that's super relevant and is on the top of everyone's minds is should you, I think you as a company, should you as a company be using AI?
I dare to say everyone's used ChatGPT at this point, right? Like I have really enjoyed seeing people that I thought would never use ChatGPT, like make vacation itineraries and like do math and things. And I'm like, man, like you're using it. And I'm not going to say who these people are that surprise me, but it shows like obviously everyone knows about it and is using it. I think the question, should you be using it in your company? That's a bigger question mark, right? Because it's not like, oh, am I going to do my vacation itinerary? It's, am I going to give access to data? Is it going to change how my employees work? Is the quality going to be as high? Are things going to be slower? Are we going to have to pay for it? Where's the data hosted, right? There's so many different pieces that come into it. But I think the short of it is like, should you be making an effort to use it in some way? Are you going to fall behind if you don't? Or should you let everyone else kind of bang their heads against the wall? Well, I don't know. What do you think, Connor?
Guilty as charged. We use it personally. Actually, we have a company. It's like the way we leverage AI today could technically be we allow our employees a subscription to ChatGPT or OpenAI.
Sure.
And a lot of us, it's like we don't tell people to use it. It's just a lot of us naturally do. And you mentioned like, oh, you're doing math with it. I actually did that the other day. I was trying to solve this math problem about like the way you could combine numbers on the lock. And I couldn't quite figure out how to check that my math was correct. I had an answer. I was like, I don't know if this is right. Literally went to ChatGPT and I was just like, write me some Python that does X, Y, and Z and calculates all the ways you can combine these numbers in these ways. 2 seconds later, it spits it out, put it into my computer, and it's like, all right, I got the right answer. Yeah, I just checked it. So that would have taken me hours to write on my own from scratch.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think there's so much low-hanging fruit that like a little bit of it is just thinking about what are ways that I could use this. Like maybe it's not, you wouldn't inherently think like write me some Python to do a math equation. Maybe you'd say like write a blog post, right? I think a lot of the more creative things, ironically, are kind of the lowest hanging fruit for AI right now. But yeah, I mean, when we talk about like, should you use it for your business? I know Microsoft had a webinar about Copilot yesterday that a bunch of people were talking about and we're on. It's interesting to me that like Copilot has so much interest. And I think it's just because it's hard to know how to use AI in your business. And if Microsoft has a solution, that's probably an easy way to start. Like, I don't think that people necessarily think Copilot's the best. one, I think it's integrated, right? And I think the other is that it's like kind of safe because Microsoft's doing it.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the belief. Um, I think for using it for your business, there's two types of productivity. There's individuals, and then there's like, does your service offering, does your product offering leverage it in some capacity? And I'll draw upon a ton of experience that Josh, my co-founder, actually has in this because his previous startup that he was working at was a malware analysis startup that leveraged machine learning, and this was way before OpenAI or any
Sure.
publicly available LLMs. So it's like they would get the data sets, they would train their own machine learning models. They built it all from scratch. And he's like, this is all the stuff that I learned on what not to do at the last startup.
Sure.
Uh, and it was all things like the really novel thing about AI isn't necessarily the problems that it can solve today, but it's the scale it lets you solve the problems at.
Totally.
So, an example that is really poignant for us is like email triaging. Somebody reports an email and says, I think this is phishing. What do you do with it? It's like, well, currently, what do? You have a SOC team, whether that's internal or external, or it's internal IT folk, and they review it and they say thumbs up or thumbs down. And they're probably leveraging a whole bunch of tools, but like, what if we could replace that SOC team member or most of that SOC team member's time with, hey, we've already done all the research, leveraged AI to do it. Look, you got 10,000 emails sent to you this month, but we did it in 1/8 the time.
Yeah, and I think that keys into a really like when we're at the question, should I use AI in my business? I think it needs to be really specific use cases initially. Because with anything, if it's like, I'm just going to try to do this more, like if I give you feedback and I'm like, Connor, you should speak more clearly. You're like, what does that mean? Like, how do I speak more clearly? But if I'm like, hey, when you say this word, you actually don't pronounce the D on it, right? Then it's like, okay, like now I can say that word differently when I talk. And I think it's the same thing with AI. If I'm like, hey team, go like use Copilot on a daily basis, it's like, okay, like should I just ask it a lot of things? Like should I just click buttons? But if it's like, hey, let's go use it for incident response in these specific situations, or like Thread, we write your time entries for you. You click a button and it writes a time entry. You don't like do any setup. There's no like training on data. And I think that's another big thing that can be overwhelming. It's like I want to use these AI tools that give me these awesome ROIs, but I have to go maybe to the point where I'm like coding and building things from scratch and setting up my own Azure OpenAI service instances and connecting them with APIs. Or maybe it's just like I have to go set up hundreds of rules and that's how the tools help me do it. I think as much as you can find tools that have done the back end prompting and configuration for you and just give you that quick ROI, even if it's simpler, right? Like we could do more intense things than write time entries for you. And we do some other cool things, but that was our first release because it's like, hey, click a button and it's going to solve this really annoying thing that no one likes doing. I feel like that's where a lot of people can start using AI. And I'm not saying go use Thread and write our time entries. I would love that. But whatever that like low hanging fruit is, like find the really easy ways to use AI at first.
Well, that makes sense. It's like the old adage is like, if everything's a nail, it's like whatever it is if you think everything's a nail, you'll only use a hammer.
Yeah.
AI is definitely not we're gonna build our business on the back of it. I mean, you could, but it's like you need to have the use case in mind. It's one thing I say to my team all the time, and you probably have super similar conversations at Thread. Is like, what are we actually the best in the world at? It's like, can anyone tell me? Can we go shout it out to the world? It's like, are we the best in the world at X? And it's like the more defined you can get on that, the easier time you have finding customers because you know who you're looking for. You know what they look like. You know what size they are. You know what kind of words, what kind of tools they're using. And it just gets way easier. Then you tell them, we do this. Well, can you do this other thing? Nope. If you need that, please go over to this other competitor of ours because that's not going to be us.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of power to be gained in just digging down and getting more specific.
Yeah. And I think applying that concept in a different way is like if you're an MSP and you were to ask your team, like, hey, how do we use AI internally? Like, what are the best ways we use AI today? And if they don't know right away and you're paying for AI tools, then you should probably spend some time figuring out what those are. And you should probably get some guidance around like, we use Thread to write time entries, or we use Roost to automate the onboarding of new customers, right? And I think again, you have to get back to that. Like when a ticket comes in, we use Copilot to tell us more about it. Sidekick, whatever those things are, like it's not just that you have the tool, and it's not just what the vendor tells you the tool can do. What are we saying that we're using the tool for, and actually doing that with it?
What are some safety implications in your mind? And I think it was Jimmy Hatzel who I was talking about this with. Is like there's two types of AI safety, right? There's protecting yourself against others who are leveraging AI to attack you in some fashion.
Yeah.
But then there's the actual safety of the tool. That's that second one, the safety of AI itself, and what are some of the implications? What are people not worried about that you think they should be?
Well, I thought you were going to go the other way with it, was like, what are people worried about and how they handle it? What are people not worried about and they should be? Huh.
I mean, we could go with the first one too.
Yeah. I think like my team's using AI. How do I make sure that they're not giving away company secrets, or that they're not putting out a lower quality product, right? Like, I think that's a big one. Like, I'm going to go have ChatGPT write my emails for me. And then it's like, well, it's actually using the word kindly a lot, which makes it feel like I'm using a virtual assistant and I don't actually have like an onshore service desk. But because the way ChatGPT is using these words that are a small difference, but if I'm just copy and pasting, like that's going to have a big impact. I think that's the first thing of like, guys, you have to keep the quality really high. Like, I think a lot about, I read that Jeff Bezos at Amazon, he personally reviewed every single customer service email for like the first 2 years to make sure that everyone had the right culture and the right type of response. And I think it was like when he felt like someone was at the point where he didn't need to review it anymore, then he would stop, but he would do it for a really long time. And I think that just talks about the importance of word choice and customer experience. And so you don't want to let those things slip. You want to make sure you're still providing the really high quality personal product. So maybe that's something people aren't thinking about as much. I think the thing that people are thinking about is, are you training on my data? People, what was it, like Samsung, I right away gave away like all the secrets for how they built their hard drives or something, like right when ChatGPT came out, and then it was public knowledge. So that's what everyone's afraid of, right? I just talked for a while. Connor, I'll let you cut in.
I think your first point is actually really interesting because I've never thought about it like that. Is a phrase that one of my friends, Reg Harnish, has used, is the only thing automation allows us to do is shitty things faster. So it's like, if you don't like, immediately I interpreted what you were saying as, it's like the only AI is leverage. If you're leveraging something bad, you're going to get way more of the bad. But if you're leveraging the good, you're going to get way more of the good. You just to make sure that that's what you're actually getting. It's like, if you read the Cliff Notes and expect that you've gotten like the whole book read. I remember one time, I'll bring it back to something that happened to me in middle school. I didn't read a book, right? I needed to. I just Googled a summary of the book. Okay. What I didn't know is that there were two books with the same title. And I got the summary for the wrong book. So I'm writing this book report. I hand it in, and the teacher was like, essentially, I was caught red-handed because it was very clear. I didn't read the book because I was literally summarizing this whole wrong thing. Ended up, I don't even remember what happened, whatever. But I just remember
it didn't turn out in your favor.
I remember learning from that. I was like, wow, it's like, if I'm going to take a shortcut, I'd probably not take that short of the shortcut, and I should just do a little tiny bit
double
more
check
research.
A little bit. That's hilarious. But I don't know if I agree with your friend's statement that automation lets you do shitty stuff faster. Like, obviously that's an extreme. Like, it's easy to poke holes in statements like that, and it's probably mostly true. But again, going back to our time entries, like we make time entries better. Like, typically time entries are not very good. If I'm going to go summarize what I did for the day, I'm probably just going to say like, had a call with Connor, did this, did that, did a demo, and I'm going to move on. But if I have AI like read my notes and look at my calendar, it's probably going to explain a little about how we did a podcast and some of the topics we talked about. And so maybe it's just because automation is, with large language models and OpenAI and everything, it's getting so much better that statement's a little dated. But I do think it's possible to do better work faster. You just have to be very smart about it.
To give you some more context on that statement, because it still applies to this conversation, is it was if you're it specifically, if your understanding of cybersecurity starts with vendor education and not a set of first principles of security education, you're only going to do the tools that you purchase are only going to allow you to do the wrong thing more often. It's not going to get you more secure.
100%. That makes sense. I knew that was too easy to poke holes in. There had to be more context there.
No, but that makes a ton of sense. And we actually put that quote up. Me and him did a presentation, and it was just like, "What? You're saying this publicly? It's like, is it wrong? Like, tell us."
Yeah.
But
awesome.
yeah, that's a really great way to approach AI. It's like, this is leverage. It's like, this isn't turn your brain off and get free productivity. This is now you have new problems to solve, which is, we're doing a lot more. Are we doing a lot more of the right? Are we doing a lot more of the wrong? How can we cut off the wrong, do more of the right?
Totally. But hey, before we wrap up, one more just really concrete point there that I would say is like, know what it means, know what language model your vendors are using, if it's OpenAI or whatever that is, and then know what the magic words are to know that they're not training on your data. With OpenAI, the vendor should be using Azure OpenAI Service. That means that it's separated. That means that the data is not being processed. There's different words like that. There's different ways that you separate the data from being trained. I think that's the thing that people are asking about, but they don't know how to ask the right questions.
That's why people believe prompt engineering is going to be a whole industry, is because what really matters is, well, especially with the way modern AI works today, and I guarantee 6 months from now we'll probably be singing a different tune. That's how fast it's in changing. It's like the quality
100%.
of question you ask is the quality of answer you'll get.
100%.
Awesome. For folks who wanted to connect with you or connect with Thread to learn a little bit more, or just to say, hey, where would you suggest they do that?
Yeah, getthread.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Bobby Jacobs. I've got a pirate hat on, or Bobby@getthread.com. Thanks, Connor.
Awesome. Folks, if you've been listening or watching, we will have links to Bobby and we'll have links to Thread in the show notes, so feel free to reach out and connect. Bobby, thanks so much for joining me today. It was a blast chatting, as it always is. Can't wait to see you on the next episode. As always, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to Gone Fishing. If you want to find out more about high-quality security awareness training campaigns, how to launch them in ways that actually engage employees to change their habits, then check us out, Phin Security, at phinsec.io. That's phinsec.io, or click all of the wonderful links in our show notes. Thanks for fishing with me today, and we'll see you next time.